Welcome to LandO's Logic. You've probably heard that introduction a few different times, and now the face is not there. No, it's audio only. Yes. So quickly, before we even jump into things, I want to address this very, very fast. I'm a person who loves audio stuff. I love podcasts. I love talk radio. I love sports radio, things of that nature. And I've tried to bring out LandO's Logic, this kind of content style, this name, and I've usually addressed it in these 10, 15-minute YouTube videos where it's me, talking in front of a camera, and that's fine. But I want something that can kind of be my own. I want something that can be consistent, something that I know can continue to go on for years. And that's, this podcast style piece of content that, goes up every once in a while, preferably once a week, if not maybe multiple times per week. I don't really know. But something that kind of at least starts off as audio only. I know there's gonna be a lot of people saying, oh, we want video. The point of this, though, the way that I'm trying to initiate this content is that I want it to be something that you could listen to while you're driving, something that you can listen to while you're doing, something, the same way that I personally listen to podcasts. I do it while I'm, working on things. I do it while I'm maybe even playing COD, playing anything, or driving, doing whatever. I want this to kind of be that, and I don't want it to have to rely on video, for the most part. I want it to kind of be what it's meant to be. Podcasts are meant to be audio only, not that they can't be video, but you kind of get the point. And so I think that there is something that's missing from the COD scene, or really just in general the esports space, where you kind of have this dedicated radio / podcast that is consistent. It's always going to be there, and it's more in depth. It's not just this personal YouTube video that I make that's 10 minutes and I have to try to get out of there as fast as I can. I have to fire away all these different things. No, I want there to be time for discussion, and I think that for me is what I want LandO's Logic to become. I want it to be something that can exist and kind of be there for a while. I don't want it to, like I said, just be this one-off thing. So that is why we are making it audio only. That is why you're seeing what you're seeing. And who knows? Like I said, maybe other stuff could pop up in the future. I really don't, and I don't know 100%, but still, I think, given the point that we're in right now in the season, I think it's a good time to go ahead and start these conversations. It's a good time to go ahead and start talking COD again. Because again, the off season, it's starting to come away. We're talking about possibly the CDL season starting in the new year. Don't really know exactly when myself, but I think it's just a good time. So I want to welcome everybody to LandO's Logic. Feel free to leave me some feedback in the YouTube comments. This is solely going to be on YouTube. Again, I want to kind of start this off. We'll be on Spotify, maybe even iTunes at some point in the future, but I kind of want to start this off, kind of the way that I would like to. And so that's the way we're going to kind of rock this. So today we're going to touch on two different subjects, two things that I personally have been kind of focusing on a lot as I've been watching scrimmages. I've been taking notes. For those that don't know how like a commentator prepares in the off season, it's not necessarily me playing, because it is me playing, but it's me mostly watching. So I'm watching streams. I'm watching different teams, at least as many teams as I can watch who are streaming their scrimmages. I'm watching them, taking notes, and I've had a few of these different subjects pop up to me while in the middle of watching these scrimmages. And one of those topics that we'll be hitting on today is my top 3 favorite off-season acquisitions. And again, we had some major moves happen in the offseason. I mean, there are some teams that have not even announced their rosters yet. I'm looking at you, Florida Mutineers. I'm looking at you, Paris Legion specifically. We've had some teams yet to kind of finalize things. We don't really know 100% what's happening when it comes down to the LA Thieves 4th, at least anything 100% official. We don't know what's 100% happening with the New York Subliners as of right now, with guys like Hydra. I know right now they have ASIM kind of scrimmaging with them for the moment. So again, not everything is finalized, but in terms of what we know for right now, I don't personally see these picks changing up, and so that's the reason why I want to talk about these. And feel free, by the way, in the YouTube comments, if you want to even at me on Twitter, at LandO on Twitter, let me know, right? Your personal top 3 favorite offseason acquisitions. And my favorites are for different reasons. And again, I've been watching these scrimmages. It just kind of made me think, which guys are mixing well, which guys are kind of maybe mixing with the teams better than others. And there are some that maybe aren't really playing as of, or rather playing great as of recent. But these are the ones that I've really enjoyed up to this point, and ones that I think are going to have a major impact on the regular season. Now, the first one, and these are not in any particular order. This isn't like, first is my favorite one. I do have one favorite, and I will make that known at the end. But one of my favorites is Clayster to the New York Subliners. Now, until the Chicago Optic thing, this was the biggest offseason story. I mean, literally, you have to, and again, the CDL is going to do a fantastic job at kind of mapping out what this story really is, because it was a guy who has now won back-to-back world championships. Only a handful of people can ever say they've done that. He now enters into the 3-ring conversation alongside Krim, alongside Karma, and what happens in this glory moment where he can finally start to, showcase. Not long ago, we were talking about how it's been 1,500 days since he's won a championship. Now he gets the time to kind of bask in the glory of winning his second championship, or rather winning back-to-back championships, his third overall, and he's dropped. I mean, literally, right? I mean, like that. I mean, literally, it seems as if the next night after winning a world championship, he's gone. And it's obviously with the announcement of 5v5 to 4v4. And again, if you're Dallas Empire, there's nothing you can do, right? The guys, they need to know what's happening. The players need to know what's going on. But for that organization, for those players to have to deal with that, Clayster specifically to be the guy who's the odd man out, it's crazy. It is. And it's going to be an incredible story for the New York Subliners, because if you are New York in this situation and you're looking at, the Dallas Empire move, and, it's horrible for their perspective, but it's great for you because now you get the story for the future, right? And that's the benefit that all these teams who have picked up Clayster over the years have gotten, is that they get this ever, changing storyline. The one positive, not the one positive, but one of the primary positives that the Dallas Empire had for Clay was that, hey, this guy just won a world championship. He won it with the young guys. United no longer exists, right? And they get to kind of benefit from that. The same thing could go for United when they picked him up. They picked him up after the FaZe team. This wasn't working anymore, right? You have these guys who've been playing for multiple titles. It's just not really working. You get to pick up this guy. You put him alongside the Twins, and eventually it obviously leads to success. And it's unfortunate that it led to a world championship that then, after United wins a world championship, they're no longer in COD. But still, the teams who pick up Clayster get the chance to continue the storyline. And this is arguably one of, if not the biggest storyline, at least in terms of the modern COD era, because we can talk about complexity, how massive of a change that was. But, just considering the fan base at the time, the lack of content that really existed back then, just in terms of really covering it. This is without a doubt one of the biggest moves that's ever happened in Clayster's career. So if you are in New York, this is great, right? You get one of the biggest storylines moving into next year. And I know people hate that term, storylines. Oh, what does that really mean? It means a lot. I mean, there's a reason why NBA, NFL, they are trying to tell these stories the best way that they can, right? The whole idea behind LeBron James, and I know people are going to say, oh, you're comparing Clay to LeBron James. I am in terms of storylines, because the major reason why last year's NBA Finals wasn't nearly as fascinating is because the guy that everybody is always watching wasn't there. And now you have it this season, wins the world championship, and obviously it's the bubble. You get the point. Despite that, though, you get the ever-evolving storyline of Clay. That in itself is huge. And another positive, right, about this for the New York Subliners is that not only is Clay, without a doubt, one of the biggest names in all of Call of Duty, but he's also a very valuable asset, right? It's not just this face that's going to sit on the bench, that's going to sit on a roster card graphic, some guy that you can just, throw all your sponsorships onto and just say, hey, no, he's a very good player. He's a great communicator. He's a great leader. He's always there to keep the team in check. He's already been working a lot with Mac. If you've been watching their scrimmages, a lot of time he's given Mac, hey, yeah, you shouldn't have done that. Hey, Mac, make sure that you're aware of this. They're kind of having some banter back and forth, but it's been good because it's going to show that Mac is learning. He is already seeing what things not to do, and he's learning that Clayster is going to be on him if he does make a mistake. He has obviously a great history with Zuma already, and depending on what happens with their fourth situation, in terms of, is Hydra going to be here with the visa problems right now? Obviously, during COVID, it's not easy for anybody to travel, especially from one continent to the next. So we'll see what happens with that. But I think Asim has been great so far for them, and I think he works well with Clay. There's been a lot of people talking already about how, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that Clay is already mixing bad with the New York team, and how we're already seeing these issues start to come around about communication wise, and how Clay is. Listen, I've had a few conversations with the Dallas Empire team, Clay being one of them, Rambo being another, and they don't have any problem with me saying this, because they themselves have said this publicly. The Dallas Empire team, right, that team of 5 in general, the vets absolutely destroyed the young guys on that team, right? And in terms of their communication, the way that the young guys felt, and the positive with Dallas Empire, the reason why it worked was that the young guys took it. They took it and they evolved from it. And that is the reason why that Dallas Empire team worked. And the reason why a lot of teams don't work in that situation is because the young guys aren't willing to take hard feedback. They aren't willing to take critiques. And that is exactly what Clay and Krim did last year. Not my own words. That is not my own words. That is what the team themselves have said. It was rough on the young guys, but they pushed through. And obviously, success came from it. So I don't mind, by any means whatsoever, of the on-stream things that we've heard Clay and a few of the other guys exchange. And I haven't really heard, I guess, maybe some of these. Maybe I have heard what everybody else is talking about. I don't see a problem with it. I really don't. And I think it's, and to be honest, too, one thing we have to keep in mind, they're scrimmaging off stream as well. So I can only imagine what people would say if they got to hear what the New York Subliners comms probably sound like off stream. Just something to think. Just something to think about. Something to kind of keep in mind. I don't see that being a problem whatsoever. I think New York has a huge piece in Clayster moving forward. This makes New York relevant, right? They are a big market. They clearly want brandable players. They brought in 2 of the biggest faces in COD last season in Attach and Zuma. Now they've got Clay. They got that. They got what they want. Clayster's got a great coaching staff around him, Reverend and JP. This team instantly becomes more interesting and instantly becomes more brandable. And I don't know if this is 100%, but with them picking up Hydra, the main player who was talking about Hydra last season, who was a starter in the CDL, was Clay. He was talking a lot about this guy, Hydra, obviously from the EU Challenger side, looked fantastic, had the chance to cast over him, and he was unbelievable. Without a doubt, a major player coming in the next season. If he is able to play, which who really knows. But I wonder if New York, if Clayster was the main initiator behind that move. I want to say that I heard him say that, but I don't know for a fact. The point behind it is that New York, Clay, they're meshing. They're possibly listening to him on who he wants to have as a fourth, because it was rumored to be, could it be Hydra? Could it be John? We haven't really heard a whole lot about John recently. Obviously, Asim's been screaming with the team right now, so we'll kind of see what happens, but still, it seems to be a great fit right now for Clay, and I pray that the team keeps him for at least a few seasons, because age is not affecting him and his brand is only continuing to grow. The story is only continuing to evolve. I promise the next one is not going to be as long as that one on Clay. Just had to say that. All right, next offseason move that is one of my favorites. Without a doubt, I think one of the best offseason acquisitions was Dashy to the Chicago Optic. Now, keep in mind, I'm going to timestamp this. December 7th, 2020. It is currently, for me, 1 p.m. Central Time. Dashy is going to be an MVP candidate. I'm saying it right now. I am. We've not even seen an official tournament. Home series have not started. We have seen a handful of scrimmages. And I am willing to go out on a limb and say that. Now, I'm not going to try and defend Dashy on OGLA last season. You can go back and watch Off the Break on MVTV. Said it multiple times. Not defending this. It is hurting his reputation. It is not looking good for him. Right? He goes from being, without a doubt, one of the best players in Black Ops 4 to, where is the guy, right, in Modern Warfare when he's playing for OGLA? I mean, it just didn't make sense what was going on. Kenny, during the offseason, has talked about how, hey, he tried to defend him. Kenny literally said, hey, man, I will happily step down and let you be the star. And he said he didn't show up to practice. He wasn't willing to work. I'm not going to defend that. But I think that he has a breakout year this season. I think that he and Envoy are going to become, if not already, but are going to become, at least to the general media, the average fan that watches Call of Duty, they are going to become the dynamic duo for the Chicago Optic, right? And I know I've said this a few times before, but I think that he and Envoy can be great together. I think that they're going to be able to learn from one another, right? You have one of the greatest SMGs in the game right now. You have one of the best kind of AR users right now in Dashy. Obviously, Envoy on the SMG side of things. I think that they are going to mesh well. And I think Envoy being younger, but also at the same time being such a great leader. We already saw him last season really come into Chicago. Obviously, he was the Huntsman at the time, but comes into the Huntsman with some of the biggest brand name players. I mean, you have T2P, you have Arcides, who just came off a world championship. You have Gunless, who is without a doubt one of the most well-known players in all of Call of Duty. And he comes in and unexpectedly to many starts driving the ship, right? I mean, he literally comes into the team and starts, issuing not orders, but is not by any means scared to give his opinion, and oftentimes led a lot of the strategies that Chicago did a lot of last year. And we obviously saw him toward the end of the season, especially at Champs, had that huge, and I mean huge 1v1 win versus TJ. There's been a lot of talk on how that possibly could have saved the Chicago Optic transfer. I don't necessarily think that, and again, it's a conversation for another day, but still, he has so many major moments throughout this past season for Chicago. They absolutely love this guy. He's a Chicago native, makes sense, and he was absolutely excellent for them last year. And so I think he, alongside Dashy, is going to be excellent. Dashy and Scott have already teamed before. Dashy, I think, respects Formal a lot. A lot of these guys, a lot of the younger guys, have a lot of respect for Formal, especially kind of guys who like the AR. Arcides even said that one of the main reasons why he joined Chicago was because of Formal. So a lot of these guys have a lot of respect, not only for Scump, but for Formal as well. He's also going to be paired alongside Envoy. He's with players he wants to play with. He has an owner that he wants to be under, a brand, a fan base that he wants to represent. And whether or not he realizes this is a big year for him, because again, there are a lot of stars, a lot of very talented players who are starting to trickle out a little bit. And I know that the kind of two other players that I've talked about in kind of a similar conversation to this, one of those guys being Gumless, another one of those guys being Temp, right? Temp's future, not known right now. Gumless currently on Seattle. If that doesn't work, I don't know what's going to happen. I really don't know what's going to happen. So what I'm trying to say is that for these three guys who are unbelievably talented, it goes to show that just because you are talented doesn't necessarily mean that you are guaranteed to be at the top of your game. We saw a lot of top players get benched last season. Like I said, it was unbelievable to think that we had Gunless, Dashy, others as well, who were not at Champs, starting at Champs, despite starting at the beginning of the season. So, I believe this is going to be a huge year for Dashy. I think he's going to answer the call. I think this game suits him very well. I think he's going to play well in 4v4. And a lot of people forget the sheer talent, the gun skill that Dashy has. It is one of the most impressive things that I've ever seen. One of the most unbelievable, just in general, feels for the game that I've ever seen out of any player ever in Call of Duty history. And I've watched it personally for the last 10 years. I am very, very intrigued to see how Dashy plays this season, and I think that he's going to be an MVP candidate. I think it makes sense given the role that he has, given the way that this game plays, at least for now, which you can't really bet a whole lot on that. But I think he's going to play excellent, and I'm very excited to see his impact on Chicago, because I think it's going to be felt across the entire CDL, the talent that he now has, especially with the players that he wants to be on. And again, not going to defend the OGLA thing with guys he didn't want to be with. But whether you think that is a right, attitude to have, I don't. But hey, I think it's going to work with Chicago now. All right. Final offseason acquisition, and I will go ahead and say it, this currently, and again, we have not seen every single move happen just yet, but my favorite move, at least as of right now, Arcitys to the Atlanta phase. Now, there have been a lot of people who have already gone out and said, I like this move a lot. And I like this move too, but I think I like it even more than everybody else does. I think this was the definition of, have you ever done a puzzle before? I like doing puzzles myself from time to time. And you're looking for that final piece and you're looking everywhere and you're like, where is that thing? Did the dog eat it? Did it fall on the ground? Did it get, put in the trash somehow? And you realize it was right under your arm the entire time. And you go, oh, there it is. Puzzle complete. That is what Arcitys is going to be for the Atlanta phase, right? They lose Priesta and Major Maniac in the offseason. It hurts. It does, right? Priesta, excellent player, not fully utilized on the Atlanta phase. That's not their fault, just the way that fives work. And now, obviously, transitioning to 4v4, you can only do so much. Major Maniac also hurts as well. Very talented player. I think from an in-game standpoint, a lot of people don't realize how valuable that he was to that team. But Arcitys, I think, instantly comes in and fixes a lot of things for Atlanta. And whenever I was personally, and I want to say this was like maybe 3 months out from champs, the major debate was Dallas or FaZe, right? Who's going to win the world championship? Right? Who is going to become the first CDL champion? Is it going to be Dallas? Is it going to be Atlanta? Atlanta's been super strong all season long. Dallas has kind of had this kick a little bit from time to time. And the reason why I went in Dallas was because I trusted them to outthink Atlanta, right? I think FaZe, unbelievably talented slayers, and that's undoubted, right? Those guys last year were phenomenal. At one point throughout the season, I had a few people tweet me and say, I don't think they're going to lose a series the entire year. And people forget how hyped up we were about the Atlanta phase, especially after they went and won their own home series. Guys looked unbeatable on the map, and until we saw that Chicago series, obviously, kind of come through. That was kind of the big thing at the time, but everybody was on this Atlanta train. And the reason why I wasn't, especially toward the end of the season, at least as much, was because I just trusted the Empire guys. I trusted Clay. I trusted Krim. I trusted Hook. I trusted these guys to put in the work to not only develop their game, but to counteract anything that we saw from Atlanta. And that I guess you could say, that moment for Atlanta, I think proved to them that this stigma that they were trying to prevent, that was actually the case. They kept saying, people are trying to say that we're, not a great in-game team, but you have to look at us. We got world championships on this team. Major's a great communicator. We're all great communicators. We're not missing an in-game leader. It's not the case. It didn't resonate with me. I still thought they were not getting the player that they needed. And so I feel like now you have somebody like Arcitys who already has experience with two of these guys, won a world championship with the Tiny Tears in Simp and Abizi. You have somebody who already has experience. You have guys who have already played with one another, especially on the brightest of stages. And you have somebody who instantly fills the gap of Major Maniac, if not, I think, overlaps a little bit better in terms of the communication that Arcitys brings. Arcitys comes into this team not being worried about stats, not being worried about anything other than winning. He is, without a doubt, one of the most unselfish players in the entire CDL. And last year went under the radar on Chicago. And I think personally, and I don't know if this is, going to be stated necessarily, and I know that Arcitys has a great relationship with the Chicago guys, and I think that's great. But I don't think that their styles mixed well. I don't think that Arcitys mixed well with the way the Chicago camp wanted to work in terms of the scrimmage, the scrimmaging regimen, things of that nature. We saw Arcitys multiple times come out and kind of give his frustration about the team, how they hadn't worked on certain things throughout the year. The strategies were kind of far behind, how they had yet to work on, things like search and destroy, things of that nature. And it may have been on the game, but regardless, I just don't think that Arcitys was the right fit. And I think on the Atlanta phase, he is now going to be around players that make sense to him. And again, another one of these pieces that fits perfectly. Arcitys, this is a quote directly from him. This is the first team that I'm coming into knowing what my role will be. Isn't that fascinating? Right? This guy who has been unbelievable for the past few seasons. I mean, in Black Ops 4, at the beginning of the year for United, put on one of the most impressive performances that I have ever seen. If you go back, I forget what event it was, and I probably should have looked this up, and I apologize for that, but it was one of the first events. He had like a 1.2, 1.3, and led in almost every single category possible for a United. I mean, it was Hill Time, it was KD, it was Search and Destroy KD, it was, I mean, objective-wise, slang-wise, he just dominated. And so I think for him to not even know what role he was playing at the start of the year, now to being on the Atlanta phase, with 3 proven young stars, and for him to come in and say, hey, I know what my role is going to be. I know this is the team that I'm kind of, ready to be with. I have history with these guys. I think this is a match made in heaven. I really do. And Arsenes is kind of an AR purist, right? He loves the AR role. He respects what it means to be a good AR. And I feel like when you have a player who likes the AR role like he does, like you have guys like Octane, Formal, guys who just really appreciate what it means to be an AR player. It's not just somebody who plays the role, it's somebody who embraces the role and actually kind of based on the skill sets that they provide to the team, based on like their personality type, and almost mimics what an AR should be. And I think that's exactly what Arsenes is going to be for this roster. I mean, like I said, these 4 guys, they're a group of grinders, very similar, and I think Arsenes just kind of fits the mold to what Atlanta is wanting to do. It was a no-brainer for them in the offseason, and I think it was the best move that they could have made based on what they needed. Again, love the decision. I think this is going to be great for them. They have looked dominant already, and I know that they've had a lot more. And keep this in mind. A lot of people are saying, "Oh, well, Atlanta FaZe, they're obviously the best team in the game because they've been practicing more than everybody else." Well, yeah, of course they are. Like, I don't see how that's a critique. It's like, oh, well, Chicago and Dallas and, insert team here, Toronto, they're not, they haven't scrimmaged as much as everybody else has. Okay, well, why is that a critique on Atlanta? Like, they're already trying to scrimmage more than everybody else. I don't know. It's just, for me, something interesting, and I think it's an interesting note to bring up right now. Very happy with the Atlanta move, and I think that this possibly could allow for them to be stronger than they were last season. And I'm saying, and keeping in mind, they were a second-place team. Right, they finished second at champs, won multiple championships, first in the regular season. I think that they have the potential to be better than they were last season, even given the fact that we have teams that are going to be even stronger than last season, because you go from 5v5 to 4v4. Like I said, a lot of talented players are going to different places, new mixtures, new rosters. I really like Atlanta FaZe this year, and I think that's going to be very apparent to a lot of people. Quick honorable mention. And it's hard because, I don't know. It's hard for me to want to say this, but I think that Hydra the Subliners also is very intriguing. Again, we don't know anything. We really don't. We don't know anything about what's going to happen right now with him and his, visa situation. I think that it kind of hurts, obviously, the subliners, because they don't really get to practice with Hydra. I think I saw like one scrimmage maybe with Hydra in the lineup for a short time. He's obviously playing from Europe. I think Zero right now is playing from Europe for the Royal Ravens. So it's hard. I think that has the potential, though, to be one that we look back on and say, wow, what a move for the subliners, just given the talent that Hydra has. But, it is what it is. Also, another one that I'm going to throw in there very quickly, and we're just going to instantly hop over to the next subject. Priesta to the Rocker. All right, our next and final subject of the podcast, Paris Legion. What do you do? I mean, given the situation the Paris are in right now, I mean, you've seen the rumors, you hear the players that possibly could be going to the Legion. It's just it's interesting because really, I have no idea what's going on with them. And there have been multiple times throughout the season where I have defended them, or I should say in the offseason, where I've defended them and said, listen, everybody's freaking out. Who is the Paris Legion going to grab? Who is the Paris Legion going to get? And I said, guys, just calm down, right? They have time, right? All these teams are wanting to pick up players super early. If you're Paris Legion and you're not necessarily looking, like, they're not in the market for a top 2 team. They're not in the market for a top 4 team. They are in the market to put together a team that hopefully overperforms. And so if you are in the shoes of the last team who has yet to make any moves, and you go from 5v5 to 4v4, Player salary should hopefully be less, at least from their situation. Overall starting spots become more valuable, which means the organization holds more power. What's the rush, right? I mean, you get access to all kinds of different players. What is the rush on Paris Legion team to putting together a team? I said, if you're Atlanta FaZe, they typically make moves quick, right? Dallas Empire, you get rid of Clay. Boom. You have a few of these other teams who kind of announce things quick. New York Subliners, we got to grab Clay as fast as possible. Boom, we got Clay now. Chicago Optic, let's bring in Dashy. We know we want Dashy. Cool, that's it. There's a lot of teams that already kind of knew what they wanted to do. Toronto Ultra, hey, see you, Classic? Boom, we're ready to go. There were a lot of teams that went very, very fast. And I think that it at the time, it was like, guys, what's the issue here? And I will happily, at this moment, fall on the sword and say, I was wrong. I was wrong in terms of, I thought the Paris Legion were fully aware of what they're doing. And I want to point out very quickly, as I say that, I'm not saying that they have no idea what's going on, but I was under the impression, and I think that they were too, but I was under the impression that they were doing this because of, how should I say this? I was under the impression that the Paris Legion were doing this strictly for strategy, but I believe now it is for outside reasons, and it is now their only option. So I want to talk about today. Paris Legion, what do? You have one option. You have one real option. And what is that option? Given the circumstances, you build a young squad. Why? It's very easy. Those players will play for the minimum. Those guys are willing to pay, or rather play, for $50K a year. Right? Those players, they have something to prove. Young players have a great track record, especially over the past few seasons. I mean, do we want to try to go over the fact that 2 rookies have become MVP over the last 2 years? I know Chauncey, is he really an MVP? Yes, he's an MVP in COD. Okay? It makes sense. But rookies' impact, without a doubt, was felt last season. Right? You had a number of different teams that make these moves. I mean, like 90% of the moves that we saw last year were for young guys, right? It was for young guys to come on and to be kind of major stars for the team. So I think in terms of building a young squad, it makes sense from a financial and a performance standpoint. And if you were to tell a businessman, hey, I'm going to be able to give you a product that's not only better, but is cheaper, sold, right? There's nothing else that needs to be said other than, hey, higher productivity, lower cost. Cool. Right? That's going to be the move that I'm going to make. So, again, I think that's the move that Paris Legion are going to make. I don't think there was a reason to go anywhere else other than that, at least in terms of if you can get, a high-level veteran player for the minimum, be my guest. But I think in general, if you really want a team to compete, if you really want a group of guys that can be interesting, I think you do go for the young players. I think you go for the young guys. Now, I will say that I think the Paris Legion have missed the bar a little bit. And I don't know what maybe is the current situation with Mental. I don't know what the Gorillas paid him, but I wish they would have taken a really good look at Mental. Just the story that is in general, I think would have been great. I don't know what his salary, what he's looking for. He could be one of the higher paid bench players, and that's obviously not something that they're looking for. But I wish that they would have taken a really good look at Mental, because I think that could have been a great story for the Legion. If you kind of bet on this guy and you're just saying, hey, we're going with this, 30-time champ in Gears of War. We're going to kind of ride that train that we saw Shotzi have last year for the Empire when it came to Halo. Well, now we're looking at Gears of War. Can Mental do this? I mean, that's such a great story that I think they could have rode with. Another one that I'm kind of surprised about the Paris Legion missed on was Hydra. Now, full transparency, people know this. I made this known. I worked for the Paris Legion for a short time in their inaugural season, the off season, technically this time last year. We were looking at different guys, and Hydra was not available to get at the time. We were looking at Paris players. I was told that they wanted to look at guys in France. Didn't have a problem with that, obviously. Was told that they wanted to kind of go for more of an international flair. That's what we put together, and obviously that's, what we got. So I feel like they should have gotten Hydra. But again, the impact that a lot of these guys, and trust me when I say this, a lot of the young guys, they look at the teams who are out there, and often they want to go with players that they are familiar with, or at least they have respect for. Whenever I had a chance to talk to Mac, his number one thing for me was that, hey, I got offers from Paris, I got offers from the Gorillas, but Hey, it was New York. It was Zuma. It was Attach. It was Accuracy. These guys were calling me. Of course I want to go play for them. Hydra, same situation. Glaciers tweeting about me. Of course I want to go there. I mean, as much as I would love to play for my home country, as much as I would love to play for Paris, represent that franchise, that organization, Glaciers giving me a call. And that's the impact that a player like Glacier has, that a lot of these guys do have. It's a no-brainer. Shotzi, when he joined the Dallas Empire, felt the pressure of playing alongside Krim and Clay. Absolutely feels the pressure of playing alongside them. Illy, the exact same thing. I think that Paris should already have one of these younger guys, or they should have gotten at least Mac, maybe even Sib last year, and at least rode with them, see what happens. But for whatever reason, Paris didn't, at the time, decide to pull the trigger. Now, the reason why I'm also saying go young for them, and when I'm talking about, we're going cheap. Why is that? So there have been a few reports that have come out. I guess this was actually 10 months ago. Contact Gaming, who is the owner of Paris Legion, acquired the crazy CSGO roster. That was 10 months ago for I think it was a rumored $1.5 million. $1.5 million, I think it was so they could play at the major, dropping some major cash. So 10 months ago to where we are now, it is a much different situation. And I think actually, given the time of the article, it might be now, currently in terms of where we are, I think it might have been actually 11 months, maybe even a year ago. So a year ago, 11 months to where we are now, they decided to buy a CSGO team for a rumored $1.5 million. So a totally different team, right? I mean, you look at that and you think, well, money's no issue, right? And these guys are willing to spend $1.5 million. At the same time, they also just bought a CDL spot. The year before that, they bought an Overwatch League spot. Money surely is not a problem for this team. Now, we're hearing that the Legion are wanting to sign players for the league minimum. Paris Eternal, right? And the Overwatch League. Oftentimes, folks, I'll give you a little tip. Look, if there is a CDL and an OWL team that is under the same, owners, look at what they're doing in the other esport and evaluate the way that they are approaching the offseason. Because the Paris Eternal, their Overwatch team, dropped the entire roster after the best season they've ever had. Right? They dropped the entire team. And the Dallas Fuel are like, cool, we'll take all these guys. We'll take all these assets. You guys were great last season. Thank you very much. Right? That's literally what they're doing. The Paris Eternal, which is, like I said, the same owner who owns the Paris Eternal, owns the Paris Legion. They decided to drop their entire roster after the best season they've ever had. So what are they going to do in COD? The exact same thing, right? Listen, this move, and I know this seems obvious, but there is a reason behind it. COVID has clearly hit them hard. A lot of teams, a lot of franchises, organizations, they were betting on these home series, right? They were betting on the home stands that they would be able to make a solid amount of revenue from them, or from that. You're obviously paying for these franchise slots. You're paying for housing. You're paying for, a number of different costs go into stuff like this, especially if you have two franchises at once going on in CDL, going on in Overwatch League. Obviously, if you have League of Legends as well, or other things. This was a financial decision from, and we're talking about Paris Legion, but just in general, the Paris franchise. And that is the reason why they're looking for league minimum players. It is not just simply because, we want to get guys for cheaper. That was my initial interpretation until these reports started to come out, was that. And now it also appears that they are looking for Overwatch contenders, which is essentially the challengers variant, the amateur scene, the semi-pro scene for Overwatch League. It is rumored that they are looking at Overwatch contender players moving into next year. And that is why I bet that they are doing the exact same thing with challengers in COD, right? And not that only it doesn't work in Overwatch, but it works in COD, right? It works in the CDL. We have seen young players transition from the challenger side and transition so well to starting lineups. Obviously, you have your outliers, but in general, typically works very well, right? So it makes sense. Go for young guys. I think you bring in maybe a face or a vet to the team. You bring on some talented young players, and then who knows, right? If this is really a financial decision, sell them off next season, right? Get them to sign 2-year deals. If you get, let's just say you get some random challenger player, plays excellent for your team this year. and you're in the same situation that Paris Eternal are this year for the Overwatch League, you know what? Sell those assets, right? Sell those guys, sell those players, and try to build yourself back up. That's what you're supposed to do. If you're in their shoes right now, get them to sign 2-year deals, and I think you kind of move on from that. So I think, like I said, looking at Challenger results, I think they're probably going to have to stick with North America, sadly, just given visas and given COVID right now. But I think if you see a Challenger team playing well in cups, I know we just had one cup finish. I think it was yesterday, actually, at this point. I would not be shocked, right, to see some of those guys who are playing consistently well in these Challenger Cups, at least some of them, be playing under Paris next season. And again, you have some faces, right? You have some guys that are obviously out there that are hungry for a spot. I mean, undeniable. The twins are out there. Wiskin, Scraps. You've got RX, Brack, Classic. You have John, who's still out there. A number of different talented pieces. Even in someone like Dens, right? It wouldn't surprise me whatsoever if Paris can work out a deal with Dens to bring him back next season. A great leader, a very unselfish guy, one of my favorite players in the entire CDL is Dens. Had a great season for them last year. It would not be surprising to me if they did bring him in, maybe alongside some younger guys. But I think if you want to wait out the big faces, the big dogs, right? I think you have time. But I think you bring on one vet, you bring on one leader, and then you bring in 3 young guys. Maybe you bring in some staff to look at these Challenger Cups, to look at this thing, or maybe even you rely on the veteran to do that research for you. All right, maybe if you don't have the staff to kind of really, kind of provide a full-on analysis of what you're missing out on, maybe what you do is you watch Challengers, you kind of bring on the vet, tell him, hey, 3 guys that you like, pick anyone you want. If they're willing to sign for the minimum, we'll bring them on. I think that's the way the Paris Legion is going to rock heading into next year. And it's a hard situation, right? Obviously, it's hard because it's not necessarily them just not thinking. It's them being so well aware of finances that, hey, it's the only thing that works. And obviously with COVID, it's difficult for a lot of franchises. So very unfortunate given the circumstances. But I think if you are Paris Legion, you do still have some chances, right? You can watch what's going on with Challengers. Like I said, I think you grab Dens, you maybe grab a veteran, focus on them, rely on their expertise, and you move into next year, hopefully with a team that can provide you what you want, which is probably to overachieve, but just given the way that a lot of these rosters look, I just don't know if it's possible. I'll be honest. I don't think that it's going to be possible for them to really have a solid year this season, but I think for a lot of people out there, unfortunately, it's about hanging on. And so I think that's what the Paris Legion is up to right now. Thank you so much for listening to the first episode of LandO's Logic. I say first, again, it's kind of hard, but you get the point. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of LandO's Logic. Greatly appreciate it. If you have any feedback, feel free to leave it on in the comments. Would love to bring on some guests. Would love to kind of bring on some people ahead of the CDL season. I think it's going to be a great year of some COD. It's going to be a fantastic season. It's going to be a blast to watch how all of these teams kind of start to develop. And I'm hoping that we see each other, hear each other next week. Same time, same place. I'm hoping for the, for a similar result. Who knows? We're going to start to work this thing out, but I appreciate you for tuning in. Tell your friends, tell your family. We'll listen to this all together, and I will see you all next time.